All right. Well, today I want to talk a little bit about some tips for making audit committee meetings more effective. And not only will they be more effective, but they will also be more valuable, and internal audit will be seen as more valuable when you do some of these things. And so, why am I talking about this? Because I work a lot with chief audit executives, and we talk a lot about audit committee meetings. And in fact, there are a, several different things that most audit leaders don't know about. So I wanted to share some of that with you today, so that you can have more effective meetings. Now, most of the time, this is kind of how it goes. So, a week or two or a month before the audit committee, the chief audit executive sits down. They spend probably a week going through, creating slides, looking at the wording and the bullet points on each slide. They spend time, looking at their metrics, including the metrics into the slides. They probably kind of sit down, come up with a little bit of an agenda and some speaking points that they want to make sure and cover during the audit committee meeting. So they take a week or two to do that. Then they show up at the meeting, and I like to call it a dog and pony show, if you know what that means, where they go through and it's their time to talk. They talk. They provide the information that they had prepared. They ask if there's any questions. Usually there's not. And they kind of move on and they finish the meeting, without getting a bunch of questions, and think that they did a good job. And maybe they did. And they walk away from the audit committee meeting. And then, 3 months later, 4 months later, depending on how frequently the audit committee meetings are, then they do it all over again, right? So they spend the week or two putting together the slide, all that stuff. Now, most people that do that, and if you're listening, you might be doing that. And again, you may be thinking, well, everything is working fine. The audit committee isn't asking me for anything else. They're not requesting anything else. And so you may feel like you're probably doing an okay job. But the question is, well, do you want to do an okay job, or do you want to hit the ball out of the park, to use a baseball analogy? And so if you want to hit the ball out of the park, there are a few things that you should consider maybe doing a little bit differently. Okay. And again, this is, I think I put in the description above or below this video, some information about where you can get more detail on how to improve the effectiveness of the audit committee meetings that you're running. But let me talk about a couple. And so the first thing is, as I kind of explained before, the little scenario of a week or two before, you spend all the time on the presentation, the PowerPoints, maybe you sit down with the CFO. He or she gives you comments on what you can or can't say. You modify it, you give the meeting. Okay. Now, the problem is a lot of audit leaders don't realize that during the audit committee meeting is actually the least important thing that you do about audit committee meetings. Now, many of you that are listening may be saying, well, now hold it, but just a minute. The audit committee meeting is the audit committee meeting, right? Yes and no. Okay. Because there are certain things that you need to do before the meeting, certain things you need to do during the meeting, and certain things that you need to do after the meeting. And what I find often in talking with people, and we talk about this in the Audit Leader Forum quite often, is the time actually before the meeting and after the meeting is usually more important than the meeting itself. Okay. And, again, this is live, being recorded live. So if you're on with me, put something in the comments. Let me know you're here. If you have questions, even if you disagree with me, you can put that in the comments too. so that we can have a little bit more robust discussion as well as we go through this. So again, it might seem a little crazy and not what you're taught, that before the meeting and after the meeting is actually more important than during the meeting. And the reason for that is if you've done what you needed to do before the meeting and after the meeting itself, there's no surprises. And there really isn't a lot that goes on there. And in fact, you don't have to prepare as much for the meeting. You don't have to worry if if it's not a professional speech, because that's not what it should be. And if you've done the things from a relationship standpoint before the meeting and after the meeting, then as I said, during the meeting doesn't matter as much. So I'm just going to go through a few today for you, but if you'd like more information, I put a link to the Certified Chief Audit Executive course that actually goes through, I think it's several hours worth of more detail on what you should be doing before, during, and after the meeting. So when you're ready to really dig into that, that's where the link is. Or you can message me if you can't find it, and I'll point you in the right direction. This is also something that we talk a lot about in the Audit Leader Forum. It seems like probably at least once or twice a quarter on the calls, we're talking about the board or the audit committee in one way or another. So what are some of the things that you would be doing before the meeting? Well, if if you are looking at obviously a slide deck, if that's what's needed, that you'd be doing beforehand. But a lot of the things beforehand are going to be actually meeting with the people who are going to be in that meeting before you ever get into the meeting. Okay? Because you don't want any surprises during the meeting. I will tell you one thing that will piss off your executives the most and will be very hard for you in your career is if they get surprised in an audit committee or if they get surprised in a board meeting. Okay. Which means that if there's anything controversial that you need to talk about, unless it's something that you need to talk about in executive session, because you've already gone through the the management process and feel like you have to report that directly to the audit committee, and that's a whole nother discussion we're not going to get into today. But you don't want your executives to be surprised, which means you're going to want to sit down with the key people who are going to be in that meeting. So that's probably your CEO, it's probably your CFO, it may be your controller, it may be your general counsel. But before the meeting, it's a very good idea to touch base with them. Even if it's just a short 10, 15-minute discussion with them, just so they kind of have an idea of what you're going to be talking about. And that's better done in person because what ends up happening, and this is a mistake that a lot of times people will make as well, is yes, they may route the agenda or the presentation to people and think that by doing that, they're letting them know what's going to be on the agenda, which it does, but it doesn't give them any context. Okay. And you want to give them the context because if you don't, here's what can happen. Somebody could see that and think that you're kind of attacking them, and they prepare themselves and kind of twist it on you in the middle of the meeting without you even realizing it until they do it, right? So you want to take that off the table. You want to have those discussions beforehand to make sure that everybody really understands what's there. Now, before the meeting as well, right? Your audit committee chair is probably another one that you're going to be meeting with just to kind of get an idea of what it is that he or she would like discussed and make sure that they kind of know what's going on and that they're aware of any things that might be a little controversial, right? Because again, if you're having an issue with management and you think that that might come up in the meeting, you don't want to surprise people, okay? Another example of something to do before the meeting is knowing what you're going to report during the meeting. And so again, sometimes it's, different audits that you've done, the ratings, different things like that is kind of the standard thing. But often there's also certain metrics, like how many audits have we performed, how many recommendations are outstanding or findings, how many is management covered off. And in that too, you want to make sure that you are counting the right things. Okay. And a lot of people say, well, but my board doesn't seem to care, or they don't have a problem with what I'm reporting. So isn't that okay? Well, maybe again, it's not necessarily the picture that you're wanting to paint, and it may not be what they actually value or want to see. And so before the meeting, you really want to make sure that you are crystal clear on exactly what is going on. Now, another thing that's kind of pre the meeting, but is kind of part of the meeting, is if you've been to these meetings, there's usually kind of chit chat beforehand. It's a good idea to show up early, to talk to people in the hallway and to talk with them in the boardroom before things get started, because that also is a key time when a lot of business is transacted, if you will. And so, getting the feel of what's going on in the room, people may approach you, you can approach other people. That's also a very important time, and more important than the actual meeting itself. Okay. Now, after the meeting, right? Because again, there's going to be things that may come up in the meeting that you're going to need to follow up with people after the audit committee meeting. And so again, you're going to be wanting to take notes on that and know, who you need to contact, getting some kind of feedback from people as well. Because often during the meeting, it's pretty formal. And there's even some organizations where they have, in the government's public sector space, they have what's called open meeting, which means everything that goes on in that meeting is actually public record. They record it. Anybody in the public can actually watch it. And so because of that, things are really discussed at a surface level during that meeting because the public has view of it. Okay. And so, a lot of times afterwards is a good way to be able to get feedback from people as well, because they may not actually give you their true feedback during the meeting when everybody else is sitting there. But if you're one-on-one with them, if you've established that relationship, they might look at you and say, Jason, this slide that you did, it really did not go off well. Did you see how John or Jane, the face that they made when you were talking about that slide? This is how they probably took it. You could probably do it, or could have said it maybe a better way by doing it this way instead. Okay. And so, like I said, often after the meeting, people are willing to give you more direct feedback than what you would actually get in the meeting. And so you want to make sure that you're not missing out on that. Now, also, it's an opportunity for you if again, you should be taking notes during the meeting, or somebody should be, if somebody else on your team is there, of where it looks like there are potential objections or other points that are being made. Like I said, if John or Jane on the board was making a funny face at a certain point in time, if people were falling asleep or nodding off, things like all kinds of stuff that you're looking at the body language of people, that also may tell you or notify you of something that you need to take care of after the meeting. And the sooner you can do that, the better, because then it's fresh in everybody's mind. People, if it's something that ends up being a grudge, if you will, that people don't carry that over. Anyway, so I've already gone for about 15 minutes today. Like I said, I just wanted to come on today quickly and give you a few tips for more effective audit committee meetings. And again, you saw I didn't say efficient. I said effective, right? Because what we're more concerned about is effectiveness, not necessarily efficiency of it. Obviously, we want to be efficient, but it's more important to be effective. And you do that more when you spend more time before the meeting and after the meeting. And during the meeting, yeah, you still got to do that. But what's more important is what you do before and after the meeting. And so again, if you want more short video today, there's several hours of this in the Certified Chief Audit Executive course. So if you want to get a deeper dive on that and really understand some of the tips that most CAEs don't know, then check out that course and go register for it and get the information. So with that, I'm going to cut it off for today, and I'll see you on the next live. Have a great rest of your day.